Hello, and welcome to the May 2024 meeting of Triangle Association of Freelancers. Our guest this evening is Laura Rogers, the Director of Cybersecurity Practice in the Secure Computing Institute at NC State here in Raleigh. Laura, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me here.
I wanted to begin, Laura, by asking a little bit about your background regarding cybersecurity. Where are you coming from on this very important issue?
So I stumbled into cyber somewhat inadvertently. As I mentioned before, I'm not, the techie computer science person. Because of my background in defense contracting, I've done a lot of work with defense contractors when I was with the Military Business Center and previously with NC State on a DoD grant. And so I saw this cybersecurity maturity model certification coming down the pike, and I realized very quickly that it was very complicated and expensive, and that most of the companies that I knew and worked with would not be able to implement those controls and be in compliance with the defense regulations on cyber. So my boss, Scott Dorney at the Military Business Center, he's the executive director. I talked to him about it and I said, we have to do something or we're going to lose defense business in the state. And he had the foresight to realize how important this was. So he just said, do what you need to do. And so I have a big training background in compliance and governance and risk and all of that. So I just started diving in and I created training programs for defense contractors and tools they could use as they went on their compliance journey. So it sort of morphed into what I'm doing right now, and I brought it with me to NC State. It's a year-long course for defense contractors, and we meet once a week, and we go from zero, they have nothing in place, to at the end of the year, hopefully if they've done their homework and done what they're supposed to do along the way, they're pretty much compliant and secure as well. And so, and I have a lot of consultants in the class who've been with me for years, who provide some of the technical, assistance that I might not be able to provide. And so we've developed this community of practitioners and working with, I have 89 companies in my current cohort. I'm starting a new one at the end of the summer. I also do webinars. I speak a lot at events, things like that, and things like this. Outreach is my favorite part because I like working with people and trying to help them understand, the risks and really some of the smaller things they can do to mitigate those risks.
Well, that actually segues very nicely to my next question. Because as we were talking earlier, TAF is an organization of writers and editors and other types of creatives. And I wanted to ask you, from your position, Laura, what special risks do you feel that creatives and individuals such as ourselves in this particular line might be facing when it comes to cybersecurity? Is there anything about the nature of our work that we should be especially aware of and perhaps cautious about as we do our jobs?
Well, I've been kind of thinking about that, and for the most part, it's kind of the same threats that just about everybody else experiences. The only thing that might make it a little bit different, if you are a well-known author, there's always the chance that someone would get a hold of the things that you've written, and many times that they're out in the public domain, and possibly take those, throw them into maybe Chat GPT, and kind of spit out something that they would turn into possibly something that wouldn't be something you would publish and use your name. So that would be kind of one thing that I would think about. But for the most part, you have the same threats that just about everybody else does. The number one is being phishing. And these phishing emails that we've all seen, in our work and at home, popping into our email. And, they used to be easy to spot because there was misspelled words, you could tell if it was someone from a foreign country, things like that. Lots of, flags. But now, with AI in particular, it's very, very difficult to tell if an email is really who, it's you think it's from, and if an attachment is safe. So, what I just generally do is hover over the name of who it's from and look at in their email address will show. And if that looks normal, then it's probably okay. Not always, but probably okay. But if they send you some attachment, if you weren't expecting that, you hadn't had a conversation like, hey, I'm going to send you this, it's best to reach out to them via phone, text, something like that, and say, hey, did you send me, something? Because I get emails, from people, and I know they weren't sending me something that, and so I've realized, that somebody's hacked their account and tried to send me something.
I
So that's
routinely
really
get
the big
email.
one.
I'm sorry?
Mhm.
What'd you say?
That's really the biggest one. And the mitigation to that again is really slowing down, which is very hard for me to do. I get really going fast, and we all love the technology because it does make things so much faster. I finally put a sticky note on my monitor and said, all caps and exclamation points, slow down. So that I would make myself slow down, because I was just flying through, and fortunately I was lucky that I didn't have any, breach, but the faster you go, the more likely that is to happen.
Sure. Well, I wanted to ask that question because obviously as writers and editors and whatnot, we're on our computers a lot over the course of the day. You're mentioning weird emails, though. I routinely get emails from a person who I know has died, and they always are attachments of photos.
Yep.
And I know what's going on with these. And of course, I delete them immediately, but I can see how someone who didn't know that might say, oh, this is safe, and click on it. Laura, what are you finding to be the most serious cyber threats? You just mentioned phishing as a major thing, but what else are we looking at here? What are some of the other things that we who are on our computers often and our phones really need to be aware of and cautious about?
There are several. One is kind of a new one that's coming out via text, and it has a horrible name. It's called pig butchering, and it's typically from China, and many times it is from someone who's been trafficked to perform this work. So if you have received a text from someone that says, hey, how you doing, and you don't know who it's from, you need to delete that immediately, because what happens is they do that. And then you might think, gosh, I don't have this person's name, in my contacts, but it must be somebody who knows me, because they're like, hey, how you doing? And then you respond, and then they respond back, and they take months sometimes to develop a relationship with you. And then they can take you for everything that you have. And it is called pig butchering. It's just really awful. But they play on emotion. That's what they do. They understand psychology very, very well. And so, for example, I was talking to one of the higher ups at Cisco, and we were talking about all this kind of stuff. And he said, you wouldn't believe what I did. He said, we have these simulated phishing attacks so that we can see what employees are kind of clicking on those, and we can give them extra training. And he said, we had an email, and it said, here is your paid time off balance. Oops. And he said he looked at it and his was wrong. And it said, click here if that's not correct. Well, your paid time off, your vacation, your retirement, your all those things are hugely emotional. If it's wrong, you freak. And he clicked on it. And this is somebody from Cisco. So it's that's a tough one. But certainly pig butchering is one. Quishing is another one. If you see these QR codes are everywhere. you have to be really careful with QR codes, because, you know, it's called phishing. Someone can replace the real QR code, excuse me, with one that would send you to a site that, you know, have malware, you know, downloaded to your computer, you know, and things like that. So, you know, you just have to realize that this is like the whack-a-mole kind of syndrome, you know, and so, you know, we think something is safe, a new technology comes out like QR codes, and everybody's got a QR code. Well, then the adversaries or weirdos in their mom's basement or whatever come up with a way to, you know, to mess that up. And so we're always like a step behind. The minute we get a new technology that we think is going to help, you know, they've already figured out a way around it. So that's one thing. But when you're a writer, I mean, there's a variety of things that can happen. So if you look at data, there's what's called the CIA triad. There's the confidentiality, and that means somebody else isn't getting your data or your article. There's integrity, which means it's someone hasn't gotten in and encrypted it or turned it into kind of gobbledygook that you could never read or retrieve, or availability. So like with ransomware, they lock it down, and your you know, your data is no longer available. So, you know, there's kind of three ways to get you: either confidentiality, they're stealing it; integrity, they're turning it into something that's worthless; or like with ransomware, availability is no longer available. So those are the big ones, and ransomware is becoming much more of a threat, because now we have what's called ransomware as a service. Before, somebody would have to develop their own way of getting, you know, getting to you through ransomware. Well, now there's companies that do ransomware. You just call them up, hey, you know, I need to do, you know, and they just send it to you, and you blast it out. You know, so I mean, it's like an enterprise, it's a company. You know, there's companies out there that do ransomware as a service. And so it's mind-boggling, really. Yeah.
Are most of these bad actors in China and Russia, or are there other regions of the world? And are any of them based in the United States?
Yes, of course, they're based in the United States. You know, China is known for copying our technology. So, for example, our F-35 fighter jet, they got a hold of that, the plans for that, and made an almost identical copy, including the design flaw. So they're all about, you know, a lot of different things, but the biggest thing in terms of like me working with defense contractors is they're getting us, you know, our technology, and it's being exfiltrated every day. And then with Russia, they're more of like wanting us to be like the Keystone Cops and sort of, you know, wreaking havoc, like with, you know, with elections and messing with all of that kind of stuff to get us sort of, you know, confused. North Korea needs a lot of money, so a lot of the ransomware, you know, comes from there. And Iran, they're just mad at us in general, and so they're just going to do whatever they need to do to bring us down. So those are the four kind of biggies, you know. But you know, we obviously have our problems too, and they're not nation state type of problems. They're just bad actors, you know,
Right.
who do things they shouldn't be doing. And you know, when you talk about like the kind of weirdo in his mom's basement or whatever, to a lot of these folks, this is kind of fun, you know. They're using their superior intellect, you know, to get around these things, and for them it's kind of fun.
They like the challenge.
Right.
Have you ever been hacked? Have you ever had to deal with this personally?
No, thankfully I have not. You know, my biggest fear, you know, because at work we have all the controls in place, we have VPNs, all that kind of stuff. I don't worry that. But from my personal perspective, I worry about losing funds out of my bank accounts and stuff. And so, I went on and I put a lot of controls in place there. So, for example, I'm with Wells Fargo, and every morning I get a list of everything that went out of my checking account. And I know exactly, and I read through every bit of it and to see if it's okay. And anytime I have a credit card through them, and then anytime that there is a credit card charge, even if it's $2, I get a text and an email to verify. And I have had some charges that were, I guess I really was kind of hacked. I did have one charge one time that was not mine. And so they sent me a new card, or we set up a new account and all that kind of stuff. But I've never lost anything.
It sounds like all of these security measures that you just discussed were things that you activated yourself. Is
Yes.
that right? And
Yes.
that segues to my next question, though, because I wanted to ask from your perspective, what are the most basic things we should be doing to protect ourselves? Just the pure basics, and then what else would you suggest that we do?
Okay. There are, sort of what are called basic cyber hygiene. Number one being strong passwords. I did an article recently for a volunteer organization that I'm in, and they said, "Hey, could you just write up a cyber thing?" I'm like, "Sure." So I just did passwords. I couldn't believe how many people reached out to me and said they didn't know they weren't supposed to have the same password for every account. They didn't know they weren't supposed to have words that are in the dictionary. They didn't know, those of us who are in the space assume everybody knows this stuff. But you want a really strong password. And if you struggle with passwords, get a password manager like LastPass, something like that, so that you can have really strong passwords. Because if you have something, like I have this little graphic that I show my defense contractors, and it says if my password is my dog Rex, it can take less than 2 seconds to hack that. But if I have a 16-character password with a mixture of upper and lowercase and numbers and special characters, it can take 10 to 20,000 years to hack. Now that's pre-quantum computing, but that's where we are right now. It's pre-quantum. So you want to do that, and it is a pain, but it's much easier if you have a password manager. So that is one thing. And the thing that this one is what a lot of people don't think of is default passwords. So, for example, you sign up for Spectrum, and they come to your house and they give you, they put the router in there and everything, and there is a default password actually written on it. And most people don't know that those are super easy to find on the internet. And so they don't change that default password. And furthermore, when you try to change it, it's excruciating the steps you have to go through. So I actually complained to Spectrum, and I say, you guys are contributing to people getting hacked. So, default passwords are just the worst. You should never use a default password. You should always change any password that's been given to you on some device, or your smart thermometer, or your smart whatever it is. And I wouldn't have a lot of smart stuff either. I don't have any except my smartphone. Most people in cyber don't, because it just increases the attack surface. But that's one thing. And there's antivirus, obviously, and
Wanted to ask you about that, if there are, what you would recommend. May I ask what you use, if you don't mind?
Yes, I use WebRoot.
So do I.
But yeah, so you can use WebRoot. You can use Norton 360 has an antivirus plus a VPN. And so that's everybody knows Norton. It's a good product. There's nothing wrong with it. But you want to have a VPN as well. So that You may not need it at your house if you have a strong password on your Wi-Fi. But if you are, out in public somewhere, you just never, ever, ever, ever use public Wi-Fi without going through your VPN.
Would you explain what a VPN is?
Yeah, it's a virtual private network. So sometimes they call it like a tunnel, but it's like it sort of like encrypts, your data in between you and the server you're going in between. So it's like this encrypted, they call it a tunnel, but that's what it is.
Okay.
So that, it's just not out there for, anybody to just get. If you were on a public Wi-Fi, anybody can go on and see that your computer is on that network and they can get in. And so you just never want to do that. You want to make sure that you have, a VPN. And another thing that is really important that a lot of people don't do is backing up their data. And I'm not good about that myself, on my home computer.
I'm
I
sorry,
do have
doing what to their data?
back it up.
Oh, yeah.
So the best practice is that you have a physical backup. Like I don't know if I have it around here, a little hard drive. You can buy them for $60, $70. And you can back up your data and put it on that hard drive. The problem with it being just physical is my house burns down and I'll lose it all. So it's nice to have one that's also cloud-based. So like a Carbonite, something like that, that just automatically backs up your data so that if something physical happens, you can retrieve it. So backups are, kind of a big deal. Another thing that people tend to kind of mess up on is having old equipment and old operating systems. So if you recall, a few years ago, there was on a water supplier down in Florida somewhere, and they were using like Windows 7, I mean, just old stuff. And the adversaries know that those are no longer supported, which means you're no longer getting any updates or patches. If a vulnerability is found, it's just there on the old stuff. So if you keep that, all these vulnerabilities are out in, everybody knows who they are because their CISA maintains, a list of vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities are everywhere. Anybody can find them. So if they're hunting around and find that you're using Windows 7, they know exactly what those vulnerabilities are and they can exploit those. But in that particular case, the person happened to be sitting at their computer and they saw their mouse moving around without them moving it. And it had cranked up the lie that would go into the water supply by 100 times. Now, had that person not been sitting there, every person in that city would have had their esophagus burned out.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So that is a big deal, is to make sure that, you are using, updated operating systems and software and equipment. And if it's not, then I know it's expensive, but you've got to replace it because you are too much at risk. And then that brings up the other item, which is updates. I can remember back in the day when maybe once every 3 or 4 months, I get a Chrome update. And those updates are to patch a vulnerability in general. Sometimes it's for optimization, but in general, it's to patch a vulnerability. So now I get sometimes twice a week, update, and it's a pain. Luckily, Chrome has come a long way and it will keep your tabs open. It's not like you have to shut down your computer and start over. But if you see that there are updates, not like from an email, but from, something, in your computer, like you see it on Chrome, or you see you're opening up a Word doc and it'll say, you don't have the latest version, you need to update, things like that. You want to continue, you want to make sure you're updating, because again, that is to patch a vulnerability that's been found. So that's super important.
I love all of this, Laura. This is really vital and important information that you're sharing with us. Knowing what you do for a living and what you know, which certainly is far more than any of us do. What scares you the most about cybersecurity today?
I get this over here. Hang on one second. I didn't realize I had this. Get rid of the glare there. I apologize. Well, I think my fear more than anything else is that we're going to lose our country. And not from like personal, but in general, our adversaries want our dirt. That is a fact. And they are hell-bent on getting it. And so the easiest way to do that is a cyber attack. And if they dismantle if so, like taking down the grids, that's not hard to do. We're so vulnerable. Our food supply is so vulnerable. Our water supply, everything is so vulnerable. And that's what scares me, is that we won't have a country to call home anymore. And I have an ancestor who fought in the Revolutionary War, helped, establish this country. And I can just hear him saying, "Don't you dare let this go," And so that's why I do what I do I want a country. I want our country, all warts and all the things we've done wrong. We are still, in my opinion, the best country in the world. The entire free world depends upon us to be stable. If we topple, the entire free world goes. And that's a fact.
I have a sudden urge to build a bunker, Laura.
I know. I still have my property out in Western North Carolina, and for that very reason.
Well, it wasn't our intent to scare people, but I think it's really important that everybody understands the precarious situation that we're in and how these risks change literally by the day, and why it is so important for us to know that and to take the steps necessary to protect ourselves.
Right.
In conclusion, Laura, I wanted to ask if there are any resources on cybersecurity that you could point us to, where we might be able to learn more or kind of better understand the risks that we're facing and what we can do to protect ourselves.
Right. So CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, has just tons of resources on their site. About things that, individuals can do, small businesses can do, things like that. But in general, it's, for all of us, it's like, is there anything new? I was at a conference the other day, thinking there would be all kinds of new ways to secure yourself now with AI. And it's the basic same stuff again. It's just this basic hygiene. I do recommend one other thing, and that is signing up for credit alerts. So if, like with Experian, I've signed up with them. So if something hits my credit report, and I didn't I didn't buy anything or sign up for a credit card, then I know there's a problem. Yeah, and I don't like to scare anybody either, but this is reality. And it's going to take all of us working together, because we need to raise the collective cyber bar. And, if the things that you've learned, you can take to family, friends, neighbors, all that kind of stuff. And until we can all kind of, level the playing field a little bit and not be so vulnerable. And then you feel better. when you're not quite so
You mind
vulnerable.
if we see if anybody has some questions for you? Is anyone,
Sure.
I see Sarah. Sarah, do you have a question for Laura?
Mhm.
Talk a little quietly because I'm in a library. Um,
I saw
so
people walking behind you.
my internet line is still cut at home. So,
Oh,
um, but one thing for me is I did have all my passwords on the Note app on my phone, and I was told that someone can hack into my phone and take my passwords. So then that made me think that a place like LastPass could be hacked too. So now I literally have a paper password book, but I'm always afraid I'm going to lose it or someone might take it, like a cleaning person or something. Like, I don't know what's safest. And I mean, you say that you use LastPass as your software for passwords, but is that secure? Wouldn't that be a number one software that people would try to hack?
Yeah, they do try to hack it.
Okay.
But it is much safer than OneNote.
Okay.
Much safer. I worry with LastPass because it's a single point of failure. But that's a risk I'm willing to take, versus trying to remember passwords or write them down. Writing them down really isn't that big of a deal as long as you don't take them with you. And you put them in a locked drawer at your
Okay.
house. That really is okay.
Okay.
I wouldn't be, worried too much about that. You just don't want anybody to know that's where they are and you want them locked up so that somebody won't get them. Where we run into problems is where people will put on a yellow sticky their password to get into their computer and put it on the monitor, right? I mean, people used to do, heck, I did that 15 years ago. But that's what people do. And that's the kind of thing you really want to avoid. So writing them down is not a big deal. It's just making sure I wouldn't carry them with me.
I
So,
always stress like I went on a vacation last week and I wasn't sure where my password book was before I left, and there were cleaning people in the house, and then I was like all catastrophizing, like,
yeah,
what if they
yeah,
took it? And
right.
and I'm sure the cleaning people want it, but you know what I mean. There's
Yeah,
always that unknown.
yeah, I know. It's hard. It's really frustrating to always be worrying about those sorts of things. So what I finally decided is I'm going to put all these in place. And we already all have multi-factor authentication on most, like your banking and stuff like that. I would recommend if you're doing Facebook, LinkedIn, all those kind of things, put multi-factor on there, and you just go into the security settings, so that somebody can't get in there. And just do everything you can possibly do, and then just forget it. I mean, you can't worry all the time.
Yeah.
Just know that you've done everything you can do.
Nancy, hold on one second. Real quick, Laura, Christy was wondering if RoboForm is safe.
I'm not sure what RoboForm is.
Christy? Christy?
Well, maybe she doesn't have audio.
Oh, could be.
Oh, no, she doesn't have a
Christy's
mic.
saying she doesn't have a mic.
Okay.
Does anyone else know what RoboForm is? I've never heard of it myself, so.
I'm happy to look it up. I don't know if it's like, sometimes you can get these forms that, like survey. Oh, it's a password
It's
manager.
password manager.
It's probably okay. I've not heard of that one. So, it would be worth, what I would do is actually I would Google it and read reviews. I do a lot of that review reading and see what people are doing, but I've not heard of that one.
And Nancy, you had a question?
Yes. How safe is my smartphone? Do I have to put a password to open it?
Yes,
Damn.
you do.
I just went
Um,
on a vacation and I did. It's just that every time I take a picture, I have to do to open
I
it.
know, I know, and I hate it too, but yeah, you have to do that. And that brings up the point of biometrics. Things like your
Yeah, but then my
thumbprint and your
husband could
face.
not open my phone in an emergency, so I'm not doing biometric.
I'm not a fan, because here's the thing, somebody gets my password, I can change it. They get my thumbprint, that's my thumbprint forever. And they can get in if they can figure out a way to get, with facial recognition, and they can get my face, they can get into anything. I'm not a biometrics fan.
I have a second question, only because you mentioned biometric. One of my banks, a big one, now is offering voice ID.
Yep.
They said that they will record my voice, so anytime I call in to talk to someone, I don't have to do the rigmarole of my account number and phone
Right.
number and password. But AI can do your voice, so I don't know that that's
I don't do that. I have the same thing.
Same
They're
thing.
trying to get me to do it. I'm like, I'm not
I'm
doing
not
it.
doing it right now, not till they prove it's safe.
Exactly. Hannah?
Yes, my son had me use Google for to save my passwords on, which works for some things, but then other things I'm screwed because I can't remember it. And then also just, getting older and stuff happens. What's a safeguard so that my sons will have access to the important things that they need to get into if something happens to me?
So, what I did is I, had everything printed out, and I have it in a safety deposit box. And my son has a key to that safety deposit box. And so if something happens to me, yeah, it's a pain in the butt. He'll have to go to the bank and get it. But I don't know. I mean, I could hide it somewhere in the house, and then tell him where it is or whatever. The other thing is that depending on, how the kind of relationship that you have, you can also, kind of put them on your accounts so that I've done that too. So that they can have access as long as you trust them, So like when my parents were terminally ill, that's what we did. But we waited until that time, but then we went to the bank and put me on everything so that there was nothing, when they passed, I could, it was just seamless. Yeah.
Any other questions for Laura? Sarah?
I had a couple. So one of the scariest things that sounds scariest to me is it may be related to the ransomware, but I've heard of people getting a blank screen on their computer where if you don't pay up, they're going to take everything. And is that a ransom like you were talking about? And what fatal mistake do you do that can cause that? Or is there nothing you can do if somebody does that to you?
Generally, you've clicked on something you shouldn't click on, and that's how they've
Okay.
gotten in. What you need to do if you experience a ransomware attack, don't pay right away. Call the FBI. They have a cyber division. I know those people. They're wonderful, and they will work on it and try to help you get out of it. In fact, at the state of North Carolina, if you are a state agency, you are not allowed to pay the ransom. So we have a lot of people in the state who can help.
Okay.
And if it's ransomware, you call the FBI.
Okay, that's good to know. And one last question. Well, I kind of have two questions, but um, back up everything virtually through iDrive.
Mhm. Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good one.
it's safe?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And then the other question is, I really do have an old computer, but I do have an updated Windows. Is it more important the software that's on the computer or the actual date of your hardware when it comes to cybersecurity?
Well, inside your computer, you have what's called firmware that kind of runs the computer. And if that is old and not being patched, then you might have a problem, but it's a very simple way to, you just Google. I mean, I Google everything. You know, is whatever version you have, is this still being supported by the manufacturer?
Okay.
You know, and that's really, that's all you need to know. Are they still supporting whatever it is? And if it's software, hardware, firmware, you know, whatever it is, you need to make sure that they're still supporting it. And if they are, then you're fine. And they
Okay.
usually will alert you when they are going to stop supporting.
Okay.
Laura, Nancy P was wondering about the security risks of clicking on videos in Facebook, or maybe YouTube also.
Facebook, I don't really do Facebook, because of that very reason. There are just too many things that have happened with Facebook. And I just don't do it. I wouldn't click on much of anything. And I'd just scroll. I mean, it's tempting because you get on there and there's such all this neat stuff, but you just don't know if someone's account has been hacked and that somebody else has gotten in there, and you click on that video and then malware is downloaded, and then you know, then it's on.
So we
And
can't assume that Facebook can guarantee the security of the videos or
no,
anything else on its pages.
no,
And we should
no.
not assume that they are safe.
No, no. I mean, Facebook has gotten in a lot of trouble. You saw the Zuckerberg in front of Congress, you know, and they can't tell us what they've done with our data. So yeah, they have really taken advantage of all of us. And we have no idea, all the data we've put out there on Facebook, we have no idea where it is and who paid for it, and you know, what that next person that paid for it. And I think the real key here is that you start, you know, asking questions and be suspicious. So for example, I was gonna switch car insurance to Progressive. You know, and they're like, well, we're gonna send you that little gizmo that you plug into your car to see how you drive or whatever. And I'm like, no, you're not. I do cyber. I said, you tell me who gets that data. How, you know, who is getting the data about how I drive and what are they doing with it? I said, no, not doing it. Is we all need to get to a point where it's like, this is my data, this is my driving data, and I'm going to decide who gets to have that, not you. And that's where we as a society can start driving these companies to better security. So yeah, just
Any
start
final
doing that.
questions? Well, we have Laura. Looking good, Laura. I can't thank you enough. This has just been amazing and invaluable and super duper important. And really, really appreciate your time and the information and the
happy to.
insight you've shared with us this evening.
Oh, I'm happy to anytime. If you want me to come back, I'll be happy to come back. You just
Might
let
take
me
you,
know.
might take you
Yeah.
up on that for
All
sure.
right.
If you'd like to hang with us, we've got a couple more minutes of a meeting, and this is the part where everybody shares their good news, their sales, and anything else that they have to report. And let me throw that out. Does anyone have any good news to share? Anybody done anything? Sue? How's your novel doing, Sue?
The sales are okay. I was minding my own business, writing my second book. I wanted to do 3 with this character and then an offshoot, like 6 altogether. So I was about halfway, well, I was almost done. I was in act 3 of my 3rd book. It was around December, my second book, sorry. And a friend of mine that I knew from the American Marketing Association texted me. And long story short, she offered me this unbelievable job. Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's mostly content writing. And now suddenly I'm, you know, I kind of took my foot off the gas during the pandemic, and and now I'm working a 40-hour week, which I haven't done for a really long time.
Well, congrats on that gig, though. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, she
I
was,
hope you're able to find some time to get back to finish your
yeah,
second
no,
one.
I've always sort of written in the margins of my life, so I think that'll be okay. I haven't found a publisher, so if outside of Drew, if anyone knows a publisher, Drew and I have talked. But it was kind of odd because she texted me. This was in December. It took her a while to actually get me on the books. And she said, well, I have this job for you. Send me your latest work. And I did, And she said, okay, well, it's a freelance thing, so it's not forever, which is okay by me because it's extremely demanding. And she said, name your price, what salary do you want? So I gave her a number and she said, what are you, nuts? I'll give you twice that. I had no idea what I was worth. And I called Jenny Hart and she said, you are nuts. Of course, that's what you're worth, So check with your friends before you give a number.
Right.
It reminds me, I have a writer friend in Florida named Christina, and her advice is no matter how much you're thinking of asking, ask for more. So, yeah,
I've just been out of the game for so long, doing my own thing.
Yeah.
I was just,
yeah, I get it. But congrats on that.
yeah.
Sarah?
Thank you.
I'm phasing out a client for my graphic design and content marketing business, so I'm looking for more writing opportunities. And now I'll be writing for Raleigh Magazine and for Five West. So those are good local publications. And I just did my first interview ever with two women from Shaw University about a TED Talk series they hosted. So that was really neat. And so I'm still looking for more opportunities like that. But so far it's been fun. Every story's different.
That's great. Congrats on that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Oh, Hannah?
I've pitched a couple of ideas to Amy from Writer's Digest, and she's very excited on them. And today at her meeting, she was going to send them. One is for the website, and the other is for all ages. So I'm waiting to hear back on that with bated breath. 'Cause
That's
part of
going to
it's,
be a major
interviewing-
announcement when it comes.
Yeah. Yes. Part of it's interviewing Henry Winkler, so we'll see.
Fingers crossed on that, Hannah. That would be wonderful.
Yes.
And then we'll get him for a TAF talk.
You read my mind.
That's it. Well, everybody, this has been awesome. It's a great meeting as always. Laura, thank you again for joining us this evening. We really appreciate everything you had to offer tonight. And we definitely will take you up on your offer. I'll have you back
Okay.
at a later date. But I
All
want to thank
right.
you for everything. And I hope you have a
You
great
bet.
evening.
Thanks, you all too, and good luck with your writing. I hope I'm reading something that you've written at some point.
You probably are. We're ubiquitous.
Good, wonderful.
So
Well,
much.
thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate all of it.
You